I've done videos now for the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5 when it comes to maintaining the system over the course of the life of that platform. And I figured people were asking, we might as well do a Switch one as well. And this is something that, yes, I believe basically every Switch owner should do at some point in time throughout their system's life, because it will work to maintain and overall extend the life of that system. And we're going to go over it here step by step today. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to the like button, subscribe if you're new, and we'll start today with this video sponsor. So today's video is sponsored by Opera GX, and this is an easy spot, to be honest, because I use Opera GX, and I'll admit, wasn't expecting that with what I remember of Opera from back in the day, but things have certainly changed. Opera GX is set up with gamers in mind, taking up less resources than other browsers, letting you save all that additional RAM and processing power for your games. I really like the customization options for Opera GX since it plays into my old arcade nostalgia. Using GX mods, you can change the entire browser around with different sound effects, visuals, background music. You can turn on or off any of these features to mold the experience how you like. And you can always browse for new themes and mods in the GX store to apply to your setup. It ends up being a lot of fun to try different mods and customize your browser. Makes the whole experience feel more personalized. Staying up to date with gaming news is a lot easier using GX Corner. Take it from me as someone who is constantly researching. I really like the release calendar that is split up by platform, making it easy to remember what's coming out each week. There's even a deals section letting you catch titles on steep discount. It's sort of like getting those gaming magazines every week just right in your browser. Switching browsers is a pain, but Opera GX is equipped with an import tool, so you can quickly import all of your settings from your previous browser, like history, bookmarks, and cookies. Opera GX is also compatible with every Google Chrome extension. Opera GX is completely free and makes browsing the web fun again. Use my link below to download Opera GX today. Thanks to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. Now, the system we're going to be working on here in this video is a launch day Switch with the model HAC001, but the concept will work across all different Switch systems in that we are going to be cleaning out the inside of the device right around where it would typically have failure from dust kind of collecting inside of it. Some of the tools I recommend: you will need a couple of different screwdrivers. You'll need precision screwdrivers for like the tri-tip, and then for the Phillips head. I also recommend having thermal compound on hand. It's cheap on Amazon, and to be honest, if you're going to open your system like the Switch that can be kind of intimidating, you probably don't want to have to do it too many times. I would just take care of everything all at once, one time. And obviously, I would recommend having like some paper towels or something on hand, and then compressed air just to make sure it's as clean as you can get it. Oh, and definitely take pictures with a cell phone as you go through and remove each layer. That way you can go back to it and reference different screw positions when you're putting it back together. And with that, let's start taking apart the Switch. There is one screw on the top and then two screws on the bottom. These are fine Phillips head screws. Around the corners on the back, there are tri-point screws, and there's also one Phillips head screw underneath the kickstand. And go ahead and make sure your SD card is removed at this point, as it will fight you and kind of keep that back shell in place. Then looking at the side railings where the Joy-Cons would slide into place, you'll notice a number of screws. You only have to actually take out the center one. That's it. That's the only thing really holding on the back shell. The others are mostly there just to hold the Joy-Con railing in place and provide support. After you get that back shell off, you're going to see a metal shielding, and really there's just screws around the corners. Those are Phillips head screws, and then keep in mind there is one screw directly in the middle right by where that fan is. And then on the bottom left-hand part, you're going to see an SD card slot. It's a little board with a ribbon cable that runs up to the board underneath that metal shielding. Just remove the screw and then slowly and carefully kind of pick the board up, and you should have that ribbon cable basically unclip. It's just kind of mounted through pressure. Now, when you do put it back on, you're going to want to carefully push it down essentially after lining up, that metal or that foam part that you see there is actually squished down by that back plate just to make sure it doesn't come free when you're using the switch or transporting it. All right, so now the metal shielding comes off, and immediately I would recommend unplugging the battery. You'll see some cables running down through a clip to the board. You can basically just use those wires, wiggle it slightly, and then pick it up, and the entire cable will come out, and just kind of push it to the side. That way you don't have power running through the board while you're unscrewing different screws and kind of pulling the heatsink out, which we can turn our attention to now. And you're going to see it's a heatsink that runs up and then around where that fan is. There are little foam pads up there. It's kind of like tape. It's just working to seal the heatsink and the fan kind of together. But the main things that are holding it down are 3 screws, and once you remove those, the entire heatsink will pick up and out. You're going to notice some thermal compound, okay? And that's basically going to a piece of metal that is sitting on top of the die and the RAM for the system. This is where the thermal compound comes into play that I'm recommending you replace. Technically, you don't have to. Like, you could put it back down and not mess with any of the thermal compound, but there's a good chance it might be a bit older at this point, and it makes sense just to clean it up with like a paper towel or some Q-tips or something, and then put some fresh thermal compound down. Again, we're this far, you might as well do it once so you don't have to keep opening your system maybe down the road. But if you're to the point now where you mostly just want to clean the system, you want to look to the heat sink where you see all of those fins, and make sure you can see through it as you clean out any dust that would collect. And this is really where that would take place. You might find dust bunnies or all kinds of stuff in there. Make sure it is as clean as you can get it, and you're not going to hurt the heat sink. Take a toothbrush or something if you want to really scrub it clean, and obviously take some compressed air and just blow out all those fins. It's also possible that your fan may have failed at some point, and that's why you're opening your system. Fortunately, you're to a point where the fan will come out without too much issue. There are some additional steps. For example, you will have to remove the game card board as well as that headphone jack, and that's all one piece. And when you do unscrew it, you can kind of help it to the side, and that'll reveal one screw that is kind of hidden that's part of 3 different screws that hold the fan down. So you would unclip the fan, unscrew those different screws, pop the fan out, and then put a new one in. The good news with fans, let's say it's failed or it's noisy or something, they're not very expensive. You can find them I've seen them on Amazon or eBay, $10 to $15, and you can drop a new one there. And that, of course, is the main part of what keeps your system cool and running. So it's nice to know that it's not too hard to replace. So in this case, the fan still works for me. I mostly just open it up to clean it, and I am going to drop a little pea-sized amount of thermal compound right below where that heatsink would clamp down. And after I've done this, you have to take the heatsink and essentially push it underneath of the plastic vents at the top, and then it'll sort of sit down in the place where you can put those 3 silver screws in. What I recommend doing is start with one, but just slightly tighten it, do the next one and then the other, and just kind of go around in like a clockwise or counterclockwise fashion and just slowly tighten them up. That way you have even pressure as you're tightening everything down. Now we're going to start reassembly of the system, but you do want to remember to plug your battery back in. Nothing's more annoying than getting it all back together and realizing that you didn't plug in the main power source for the system. It's pretty easy to do as you line it back up and then just press it down, make sure it's clipped in completely. From here, we're basically in the home stretch. We just have to put the metal shielding back into place with the different screws around the edges. Again, make sure you're referencing any pictures you've taken, and also don't forget about your SD card slot. I have forgotten that before. It was really annoying because then you have to take the back plate off and all of this. So make sure that's clipped back into place. After that, you just put your plastic backing into place and make sure you drop your 4 tri-tip screws in around the corners. One underneath that kickstand being the Phillips head, and then the 2 screws on the bottom, 1 screw on the top, and then a screw on either side with those Joy-Con rails. And then at this point, go ahead and power your switch on, and I would recommend either leaving it on for 15 or 20 minutes or just jumping into a game so you can get that fan spinning up really well and make sure you have good air coming out of the top. If your system was making a lot of noise or was really struggling before and you found a bunch of dust bunnies in there, it should be breathing quite a bit better at this point. And that should be pretty much it. You should now have a system that is hopefully running cooler and is cleaned out all on the inside. And as I mentioned, this is something that every Switch owner should at least do at some point in time, especially years into owning their system. And for some, this may have been a fairly basic guide, but I also understand that there are many people out there who would never have attempted this otherwise, and hopefully this will give you guys some of the know-how and maybe even the courage to attempt it and clean out the inside of your Switch with that really hard to reach place behind that heatsink. But let me know what you guys thought about this one down below, especially if you have any tips for people who are going to attempt this for the first time. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.